Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Hope you're all having a great day. And with no further ado, let's get into my mock draft 2.0. Now that we know where the teams that missed the playoffs will be um, seated in the draft order. And starting off with number one, the Raiders. Obviously, they won it in the Tank Bowl. Um, we then had that huge win. Fired Pete Carroll yesterday, so obviously new head coach alongside John Spytek, and it seems like Tom Brady will be will be helping out with the head coaching hire along with um building up this roster. And this team needs a quarterback. Geno Smith was not the right guy, but they are still contractually obligated to keep him at least for 2026. But even if he is on the roster, they're still going to need their franchise QB. And you got to go with most people's top QB. Mine is Dante Moore, but I am doing this based off how the NFL would view these guys. And it seems like Fernando Mendoza would be the top guy right now. I have Moore as my number one guy, Mendoza too. Obviously, Mendoza won the Heisman and is with Indiana, who plays on Friday against Oregon, so we'll see that game. We'll see both top QBs and see how they play, but he seems to be the consensus top guy right now, so I think the Raiders in desperate need of that franchise QB ever since they moved on from Derek Carr. They get that with Mendoza, and hopefully with him, Genty, Bowers, and build up that offensive line and build that defense. This Raiders team could be a scary force with the right coach and QB at the helm. Moving on to the Jets at number two. Another team probably looking for a QB. It was revealed the team's going to release Justin Fields, meaning they are desperately going to be looking for a QB. And there's two top guys right now who would be first round picks. I don't know if there's anybody else. And that is my QB one, Dante Moore. Moore, I mean, a special player, obviously originally committed to UCLA, but then was actually originally committed to Oregon, then flipped to UCLA, and then flipped and then committed in the transfer portal to go back to Oregon last year. He sat a year, and it's worked out. I know some people think he might stay, but we saw with guys like Drew Aller and Garrett Nussmeier last year, even Cade Klubnik, who could have been first round picks. They went back to school, and it didn't really work out for any of those guys. I think Moore, even though he doesn't have the most starts, like usually teams want a guy to have a lot of starts. But I mean, we saw with like CJ Stroud, who didn't have many starts, Bryce Young, who's not turned into the guy everybody hoped he was, but we've seen guys like Dante Moore with not a lot of starts be a top pick because of those intangibles, because of how good they are. And I think Dante Moore should declare and would be a top pick in the draft. Moving on to the third pick, the Arizona Cardinals obviously would want a quarterback, fired head coach Jonathan Gannon, but kept GM Monty Ossenfort. Meaning they believe Ossenfort can be the guy going forward with whatever head coach they hire. Kyler Murray is more than definitely going to be off this roster. You don't basically bench the guy if you're going to keep him. It's kind of like what happened with Russell Wilson just earlier in the season. Like you don't have the guy who apparently was injured for most of the year after that Titans game. You don't have him on IR, have Jacoby Brissett starting, and then say he's not going to play the rest. Like signs point to him being moved off from. Who knows who would be the bridge QB if they would draft a guy later on, but sorry about that. But they're going to be picking probably the arguable number one overall player in this class and be him, Ruben Bain, Downs. I'm going with the Ohio State. He's listed as a linebacker. I consider it more of an edge rusher, kind of like Micah Parsons coming out, kind of like um, Jalen Walker, a guy who's like kind of like a hybrid linebacker edge guy, and an Arizona team that if they're gonna pick this high and there's no QB, you just go best player available, and Arvell Reese, who can be a really talented player, whether it's off ball or on the ball, and he can make a difference for an Arizona team that has some young bright spots on the defense, but clearly is needing a reset. This would be a good start. Moving on to the fourth pick, the Titans obviously have their QB in Cam Ward, so if one of the QBs were to fall, past 2 or 3, which I highly doubt it, but if it would happen, you could see the Titans maybe trade back. But no trades, at least not until probably after the Super Bowl, just because we won't know the full order until after the Super Bowl. So I don't want to do trades until like we know where each team's going to be picking. But with the fourth overall pick, I'm gonna have the Titans go with Ruben Bain Jr., the edge rusher out of Miami. It's him or Reese. Like if you consider Reese a linebacker, then Bain's the number one edge. If you consider Reese a edge rusher, he'd be the number one. But a really talented guy. I can see the Titans going Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate, Makai Lemon. Because this draft isn't loaded with talent the way a lot of people seem to be hyping it up last year. But a Titans team that you have a guy, Jeffrey Simmons, who might be a free agent. I think his contract is up, but if you were to retain him, you could add Bain to what is a young defense that maybe if you have the right defensive mind come in to mold that defense. I mean, I could see them going with one of the top wide receivers, but I feel like Bain really gives this defense an elite edge rusher that they've been missing for a couple of years, really since Harold Landry, probably in like 2021, his last like good year with the Titans. Moving on to the fifth overall pick, the Giants, who a lot of people were always criticizing for winning games down the stretch. But look, this isn't the NBA or some of the other leagues where it's like teams are trying to like keep a protection on a pick, or they're trying to get the higher lottery. It's like the NFL players don't have fully guaranteed contracts. Coaches also aren't risking their job to lose games. So it's like you're never going to see teams blatantly try to lose games. I thought it was good to see the Giants in those final 2 weeks get some wins, build some momentum. And with this pick, we're gonna go with um Carnell Tate, the Ohio State wide receiver. He seems to be not the consensus top one. I think Jordan Tyson's up there, but he seems to be higher rated by NFL scouts and other people because of Tyson's injury history. I think Tyson will still be a top 10 pick. I just think Carnell Tate seems to be considered higher just based off of one, being the Ohio State receiver, which is obviously going to put you up on a pedestal, and then also Tyson's injury history going back to even when he was at Colorado. Moving on to the Browns, who um two huge division wins at the end of the year maybe sparks something. Obviously, you're going to need a new head coach with Kevin Stefanski, which if you look at the top 5 teams or top 6 teams outside of the Jets, which Aaron Glenn could be fired, every other team needs a new head coach, which I think that's kind of crazy. That a lot of the top teams picking up there in the top 6 need new head coaches. I think the Browns, who do have 2 first round picks, I don't think they look for a quarterback. I think you give Shador at least you give him the opportunity to compete for the job. Now, Deshaun Watson's still there, will be fully healthy, most likely. Um, so for this pick, I'm gonna go with it. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, you could go with one of the tackles, which this tackle class hyped up, but has not really lived up to the billing. I'm gonna go with my wide receiver one and Jordan Tyson. He's just a dynamic player, and you look at these Browns wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy, a decent but not great wide receiver. Cedric Tillman, Isaiah Bond, like they don't really have that elite top guy, and I think if most likely one of the wide receivers of Tate, Tyson, or Lemon will be available at 6. I think Cleveland should consider it, especially if maybe Shador is the guy, or maybe if they bring in somebody else. You're going to need playmakers outside of Harold Fannin and the two running backs, Judkins and Sampson. Moving on to Washington at 7. An injury plagued year, but Adam Peters really is going to need to um revamp this roster. Last year they overachieved based off how the roster looked, and I think Peters didn't realize it. I think he thought the team was better than what they were. This year, obviously, they downgraded. I do think this could be a possible like trade down because Washington doesn't have a lot of picks. So I could see if like a team wanted to trade up. I don't know for who, but if a team wanted to trade up, I could see Washington um trade down. But with this pick, I'm gonna go with David Bailey, the edge rusher at Texas Tech. A phenomenal year after transferring from Stanford to Tech. Um, you look at that Oregon game. I mean, him and that defensive line was incredible. That entire defense was amazing. And Bailey, who I think will be a top 10 pick when it's all said and done. I think a Washington team that needs to address a lot of defensive needs. I think they just go best defensive player, which could be Caleb Downs, but I think the safety position, we saw Kyle Hamilton, who, fell down. Even Brian Branch, nickel slash safety, he fell down the board. I think Downs, while a talented player, probably like a top 3 player in this draft class, I think he'll just fall down due to the safety position that he plays. Moving on to the 8th overall pick, the Saints. I mean, they could have their franchise guy in Tyler Shuck, who played really well. Um, Calvin Banks was a excellent pick, and he was my top tackle last year. So I really, really enjoyed him playing well and seeing the Saints team. A lot of people thought was going to be picking number 1 overall. Have some good momentum entering the year. Not sure who to go with the Saints. I feel like there's a lot of players you could go with. I feel like if you want to bring in another guy, because Chris Olave will be entering the final year of his contract, you maybe go Makai Lemon. Um, you know, Demario Davis, Cameron Jordan are um not under contract. So do you go maybe with a Sonny Styles, a Kendrick Falk? I'm gonna go with a guy who was not as good as a lot of people thought he was preseason, but I still think a really talented player in Peter Woods. I just feel like, and I know they went Clemson defensive tackle a couple years ago with Brian Bresee, but Woods is a better player, at least potential wise, and I think overall as a player he's better. And I feel like a Saints team that it seems like doesn't have many big holes on this roster. I feel like Peter Woods could be a good addition for a team that, maybe we'll be losing some stalwarts on that defense if they retire um in the coming months. Woods could be a dynamic player. Moving on to the Chiefs at number 9. A lot of people think Jeremiah Love should go here, but I feel like, I know they need a running back, but I feel like they also have bigger needs. You look at tackle maybe, and some of these guys could move to guard, which is why I am considering them, just because they can play tackle, but you know what they kind of, Casey kind of missed Joe Tooney, which at the time it made sense to trade him because they weren't going to extend him. But they have kind of missed him. I also feel like they could go corner because Trent McDuffie. They could do the same thing with him, like what they did with L'Jarius Sneed, and I could see them going McCoy, but you could also say Sonny Styles because Leo Chanel's got to be free agent. I'm gonna go with my. I'm going with the consensus, not consensus, but the top tackle for most people in Utah, Spencer Fano. You get Josh Simmons last year, so he will hopefully be the long-term guy. Jawan Taylor, I think, can be moved off from because I think he has maybe a year or two left on his contract with no real guarantees. You put Fano at right tackle. You have your bookends from Mahomes once he comes back, and this Chiefs team can really build this roster to the forefront. At number 10, the Bengals. I'm gonna go Caleb Downs. I think he still goes in the top 10 despite the safety position not being valued as much. I think a team is going to select him, and a Bengals team that needs defensive help for some reason kept Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin, despite this team now missing the playoffs 3 consecutive years. But they're going to blame it on Burrow's injury. You just got to go best defensive player, and Downs, who can be a killer, I think, gives this Bengals defense much better safety play because their safeties are like Jordan Battle, Geno Stone, Dax Hill. Like they need better, and Downs can be that for them. Number 11, the Dolphins. Obviously not going to go with a quarterback. Tyson Simpson fell off. There's no guy. Like maybe Chambliss, but he's returning. Actually, he's returning. So never mind. Um, maybe like none of these guys are good enough, and I'm gonna go with a guy who, yes, didn't play at all in 2025, but I think will be healthy for the combine, will put up great numbers, and a guy who 2024 was looking like a top 10 pick, and Miami scoops him up because he'll probably fall down because of the injury concerns. But Jermon McCoy, when healthy, is one of the best shutdown corners in a Miami team that needs defensive playmakers. I get you could go Makai Lemon because of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle's status for the future, but I think you need to address corner, which has been their biggest need for a while. Like even though they had Jalen Ramsey, it's still been a big need. And when you trade off a guy who, let's be frank, has not been very good as of recently, um, you just need to bring in somebody to be that shutdown guy, and McCoy can be that. For the Cowboys at 12, could consider Jeremiah Love. I think this could be a low spot just because, like, yes, Javonte Williams played well and you maybe want to extend him, but Love could be a guy you put in this offense. And he's also on a rookie contract, so it make it a lot easier for Dallas to pay other guys. But I think they need to go defense. And I think they go with Sonny Styles. Um, and I mean, I could consider like Mansour Delane or Avion Terrell at corner, but you need to maybe bring in the next Sean Lee. Like Sonny Styles is probably the best linebacker if you don't consider Armel Reese a linebacker. And a Cowboys team that, yes, Jeremiah Love fits perfectly, especially with um especially with Javonte Williams being a free agent, but they need to address that defense. They need to make it better. And Sonny Styles, I think, fits perfectly. For the Rams at 13, they're obviously not going. Season might have considered that. I think it comes between tackle. I mean, Delane, I think would fit perfectly if Chris Shula's. I think it would fit perfectly in Chris Shula's defense. But I'm gonna go with Francis Mauigoa, CC Mauigoa, as his nickname is. I think you have a good offensive line. Like it is really talented, but you need to get that right tackle of the future. Um, with Rob Havenstein, who's been injured most of the season. I think you need to get that replacement. And with having two picks, they still potentially could get a corner later on. For the Ravens at 14, I think you could go with um, defensive tackle Caleb Bates, Caden McDonald, Omari Washington, just because of Matt Buike's uncertain future. You could go wide receiver. Not to you could go wide receiver. Kyle Lemon's still there. You could even go with a corner because Marlon Humphrey. How much longer is he going to be there? He's clearly taking a step back. But I'm going with Makai Lemon, the USC Trojan, the Cali kid. It's just the Ravens have needed a wide receiver one. I think Lemon, who you look at his size, he's 5'11", 195, kind of like JSN in the sense like a smaller wide receiver. But we've seen JSN now in Clint Kubiak's offense be a really, really good um, player. And I think Makai Lemon can be that elite wide receiver one for Ravens team that has needed one in this Lamar Jackson era. You could go defense, but I think the Ravens need a wide receiver one. And if one of those guys is available, you take them. Moving on to the Bucks. I think this is pretty obvious. I feel like you gotta go either edge rush or linebacker. They've neglected both positions with Kendrick Folk, the Auburn Tiger. Should be the pick. Tampa. Maybe. I mean, they still haven't fired Todd Bowles, which I feel like is not the greatest decision to keep him around for 2026. But this team needs to address in the pass rush. I mean, this team signed Hassan Reddick in 2025 to be one of their premier edge rushers. They've neglected it for years. You gotta go defensively to improve this defense, which has talent. I mean, you could even go corner because Jamel Dean will be a free agent, but they've needed edge rushing help for a while. Really, ever since Bowles took over after like guys like JPP and others um left. Like when Shaq Barrett kind of declined and wasn't that same type of player. Moving on to the Jets, which I mean this could be a Jeremiah Love team, if they don't keep Brees Hall, but you go Dante Moore with your first pick. This Colts pick a lot higher than I think most people would have thought it was going to be. And I think they go with corner, Mansour Delane. I mean, you trade away Sauce Gardner, who was their top corner for a while. You have some young guys like Thomas, um, and others, but I think Mansour Delane, who if Aaron Glenn is still still the head coach for next year, which will be a questionable decision, and we'll talk about that in another video. But I think you get that corner of the future, and you help out this defense, which maybe entering 2026, it can be a better unit. Maybe second year under Glenn, and this could really be a difference maker. Moving on to the Lions at 17. This team, I mean, you might go with interior offensive line, which I think could be a huge decision because you kind of needed that, because Frank Brownell retires, so you move Graham Glasgow to center, and then that brought in two young guys to play it. You could go corner. Avion Terrell, Colton Hood, Brandon Cisse, Keith Abney from Arizona State, I think could be huge decisions, but they've needed a second pass rusher for a while, which is why I'm going to Cassius Howell. Like, ever since they drafted Aiden Hutchinson back in 2022, they have needed another guy beside him. They've always kind of relied on, you know, they had James Houston for a couple years. They have Marcus Davenport now, but they've never addressed that second edge rusher and Howell, who, yes, has smaller arms, 6'2", 248. He has smaller arms compared to most edge rushers who are his size. But I feel like that Lions defense that has neglected to really pursue a second edge rusher needs to bring one in. And I think Howell could be that difference maker. The Vikings, I mean, this could be another Jeremiah Love team, but I think you go I think you go with corner with Avion Terrell. Whether Brian Flores is there or not, Minnesota has needed corners. Um, you know, I mean Harrison Smith might be gone, but there's no safety outside of Downs. That's right now going to be a first round pick. But outside of Byron Murphy and Isaiah Rogers, who both are on shorter term deals, especially Rogers, who only has 1 year left on his deal, Minnesota has terrible CB depth, and you need to address that if you're going to be a contender for the long run. Like this offseason, or like last year's offseason, they improved the offensive line and tried to improve the trenches. Now you got to improve that secondary to really help out. Panthers at 19. This could also be Jeremiah Love, depending on what happens with Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard. But I'm gonna go with Denzel Boston. I think, yes, you have Leggett and Coker and some other guys, but they don't really have that secondary guy behind Ted McMillan and Denzel Boston, the dynamic receiver out of Washington. I think would give Bryce Young another weapon in this passing game. This could also be a Kenyon Sadiq team, the tight end from Oregon, if they wanted to improve that position. But Denzel Boston makes plenty of sense for a Panthers team that, if Bryce Young is the long term guy and they do sign him to like a extension for the long term, you're gonna need playmakers to help him out. And Boston's that guy. Dallas, we've circled around it. I'm gonna go Jeremiah Love. I know I said the first time, but I feel like Dallas might say, hey, we have 2 first round picks in this draft. Depending on how Green Bay finishes in the playoffs. We could draft a defensive guy first, and then if Love is still there, pick him. Javonte Williams had a breakout season, but I think maybe that shows that, hey, if they just had the right guy behind this offensive line, it could work wonders. And Jeremiah Love, I think, would fit perfectly into that offense and would really give Dallas a dynamic running back who's on a rookie contract. So it's like they'd be able to pay Pickens, Lamb, Prescott, Ferguson, and they'd be able to pay all these guys while Love's on that short, that rookie contract, which would really help out this Dallas team that has kind of needed big time rookies on rookie contracts playing well, like they had with like Lamb, Diggs, Parsons, a couple of years ago. Steelers at 21. I mean, this could be plenty of positions. You could go corner. They've desperately needed corners for a while. You could go receiver. Casey Concepcion is probably the only guy I consider being a first round guy. You could even go maybe tackle if you don't think Broderick Jones or or Troy Fatanu has really worked out. I don't. You wouldn't go QB because none of these guys are worth taking. So I think they just. I think they go. I think they would go. Kind of hard to really know. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Caden Proctor. Yeah, I'm gonna go Caden Proctor, who could also be a guard. And I think Broderick Jones. 3 years in has shown flashes, but also hasn't really been that great. And I think Caden Proctor, whether he starts out in the interior or whether they have him outside, I think could be a good protector for whoever that long-term QB is. Over to the Chargers, we go with Giovanna Ueno from Penn State. They need to beef up this interior offensive line. It is not the greatest. They took Zion Johnson a couple of years ago. He hasn't really been the greatest. Mekhi Becton, injury plagued year, but you got to improve that interior offensive line, especially if Slater's going to be injured a lot. Alt was injured a lot this year. I think if your tackles aren't always going to be available, you need to get good interior guys. And Giovanna Oweno from Penn State, I think, would be a good choice. Eagles at 23. This could be Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon, because maybe you want this could also be a tackle if you want that Lane Johnson. But I think they go with a guy who had a not so great 2025, but still is a first round prospect in TJ Parker, similar to his teammate Peter Woods. Um, both guys were seen as like probably top 5, top 10 picks at best, but just Clemson didn't have the greatest year, but they're still first round prospects for a reason. And look, you lose Josh Sweat in free agency. Nolan Smith, while good, I don't know if he's the long term edge one. And I think Parker could be that, not that edge one guy right away, but he could be a guy who over time could be that elite edge one that the Eagles maybe have missed, especially because they're bringing like Brandon Graham off of retirement. Moving on to the Bills, I think I'm going to go with Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M, the former NC State Wolfpack. I think he was a freshman of the year in the ACC his freshman year. Look, the Bills have needed good wide receivers on the outside. They have Shakir on the inside. Keon Coleman was supposed to be that guy, but he never really turned into that guy. Concepcion can be that guy on the outside who can help this Bills team out, give Josh Allen a reliable weapon down the field that's not a tight end, and will give this Bills offense, I feel like, more dynamic than what they are. For the Bears, you got to go defense. Um, and I think I'm gonna go with Caden McDonald, the um Ohio State Buckeye, which I think would be the fourth Buckeye on defense, fifth overall if you include Carnell Tate, but Downs, Reese, Styles, and now McDonald, which is crazy that they lost to Miami in the quarterfinals, and they're gonna have 4 first-round picks on the defensive side. But they signed Grady Jarrett in the offseason, but that wasn't really the long-term guy. You have Gravon Dexter, but you need another guy. I mean, you could consider edge rusher, um, but a lot of these guys, you know, which I've heard from plenty of people that they're not really maybe four down, um, like full four down players. Like a lot of them are lighter and more pass rush guys. They're not really going to be good run stuffers. And for a Bears defense that needs some help addressing that defense more so in the running game, I feel like it'd be a big success to get McDonald. Niners at 26. I mean, if one of the receivers, although I could see Surratt, Bell, maybe Jeremy Bernard, I can see one of these guys slipping in the first round, because Brandon Ayuk's not going to be there. Will Jawan Jennings still be a Niner? But I think they got to go offensive line. And I'm going to go with Emmanuel Pregnon. You could go Caleb Lomu or Jennings Dunker from Iowa, but Um, I think they need to improve that interior offensive line, which has been neglected for a while. And Trent Williams isn't going to play forever. You need other offensive linemen to help protect Brock Purdy. And I think the Niners do that. Houston, I mean, there's no Omarion Hampton of this class, at least right now. So I think they'd probably wait for a running back, but I think you go with Caleb Lomu from Utah. I know this offensive line has been better as of recently, but still not the greatest. You have Ariante Ursary, who could be the long-term left tackle. Lomu could be the long-term right tackle. And I think it would really help out the Houston offense, to have a better front five for CJ Stroud being protected by. The Browns at 28. We went with, then we went with Jordan Tyson, right? Yeah, Jordan Tyson. Um, you could go offensive line because I think there are, Jennings Dunker, which I'm gonna go Jennings Dunker out of Iowa. You improve this offensive line, and you give, whether it's Shador, whether it's another guy, you give them some protection. Um, and yeah, moving on to the Rams at 29. Who was the better Tennessee corner because McCoy was injured. So Hood really stepped up and played well. At a Rams team that, since trading away Jalen Ramsey, have not had a elite lockdown corner. And I think that has become a bigger issue as of recently. And I think the Rams are going to need to address that corner one fairly soon because they have plenty of guys who are decent, but they don't have any elite um, CB1s who can shut down the field. And number 30, the Pats. Um, I think, I mean, yeah. You could go wide receiver if you want one of these guys. You could go maybe interior offensive line because I think that is an issue. But I'm going to go with Caleb Banks. Actually, no, I'm not going Caleb Banks. They have Christian Barmore, Milton Williams. Actually, go with CJ Allen, the linebacker out of Georgia. I think their linebackers need to be better. Like, they have some good guys at the linebacker room. I just think CJ Allen can be a better linebacker for this New England defense. and give it more of a, like, give the New England defense better looks next year. 31, the Broncos. I'm going to go Kenyon Sadiq, the freak from Oregon. Evan Ingram did not work out as a tight end free agency signing, and Champagne loves his tight ends, and I think Sadiq could remind him of Jimmy Graham when he was with the Saints. And then finally, 32nd, the Seahawks. I mean, you could go interior offensive line. Maybe they go back-to-back years with an interior offensive line. You could go corner because Tariq Woolen was a guy who was on the trading block. I think I am. I'm gonna go with. I think I'm gonna go Keith Abney from Arizona State to finish it out. But yeah, that is my 2026 mock draft 2.0, and hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys comment, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I'll catch you guys on Friday for my 2026 playoff predictions. But until then, hope you guys have a great day and bye.